All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next installment of our Nuts and Bolts training series for the Illinois Democratic County Chairs Association. My name is Dan Kovatz. I am the Executive Director of the County Chairs Association. And tonight's training session, I think, is a valuable one for not just our newly elected officials, but our existing electeds, our staff that are working in our offices, and for anybody who might be interested in moving forward on some of the different things that go into this, and that is constituent services. We hear a lot of things from elected officials about different requests that they get made to their office on different information. So it's important to know kind of, how do we respond to those things? How do we make sure we're providing the services to the voters in a timely fashion so that it makes sense to help us and help better our communities. So tonight, we've invited our friend, Karl Coleman, to present. Karl, for those of you who don't know, is a county board member in Macon County in Decatur, and handles the constituent services as an elected official. But he's also the district director for State Senator Doris Turner, and prior to that, State Senator Andy Minar. So he's well versed on not just the elected official constituent services side as his county board member, but also as on the staff side, being able to provide those services. So before I turn it over to Karl, a couple things that I do want to mention real quickly. We're going to be here for about an hour. So we've got a wide range of people who are going to be on the call tonight. We ask everybody just please be respectful of each other. Everybody's muted on the call. So if you have questions as we're going, please put them in the chat as we're doing this. And as presenting, I'll jump in and ask questions. We'll do a Q&A session at the end as well if we need to. As I said, we're maybe about an hour, depending on how the questions go. So while we're here, please be present. Turn your phone off for a little bit. The text message or email can wait. And then the only way we're going to learn through all this is ask a lot of questions. So there's no stupid questions on this. And if we can't answer it tonight, we will absolutely follow up with you as we're going and get you an answer on any of these questions. So before I turn it over, why don't we go ahead and just kind of get the chat going. Why don't we drop in there, who you are, where you're from, if you're an elected official or staff, and that way we kind of get an idea of where everybody's coming from tonight. So as people are doing that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Karl and get him set up for his part of the presentation.
Thanks, Dan. Hope everyone can hear me, see me all right. One, I want to thank Mr. Kovatz and the IDCCA for asking me to join you all this evening and present on the wonderful topic of constituency services. As he alluded to, I kind of have a bit of experience in this department as I one now elected official myself on the Macon County Board, though in the past and currently I work for on the state side of things with State Senator Doris Turner. In the past, I worked under State Senator Andy Minar as his district director. So, constituency services. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint here shortly. I know we have some people still adding into the chat. Let me start sharing my screen here. Make this small, I'm guessing not. All right, forgive me if you guys can see that bar there. I've only shared my screen a couple of times beforehand. So, all right, constituency services, let's get started. So as Mr. Kovatz alluded to, I have some experience in this department, both on the local level as an elected official and also the state side of things as a staff member. So this presentation will have both those will be covered as well. Let's go ahead and get it chugging. All right. Constituency service. So I'm going to get started on the county aspect of things. So being a newly appointed, not a newly elected elected official, excuse me. I just got elected in November of 2020. So I'm still getting acclimated with the full totality of all of our county processes. I mean, every county does generally the same conscriptive responsibilities, though how they go about it sometimes varies, so to speak. So Macon County is pretty straightforward, though we do have our own quirks here and there. But the basis of constituency service on the county level boils down to these three main principles here. Know your county processes. The county handles elections, it handles tax collection, it handles all these different things. So making sure that you are aware and up to date upon our processes, how it's handled, where those offices are located, so that you can provide this information to your constituents as most digestible manner as possible is very, very important. Continuing on, so know your county officials and your county officers. So this is a big deal. So knowing the process is one aspect of it, but tying it together, being the conduit between the two of the public and the process, so to speak. You got to know the officials, so whether that be questions about the election of the county clerk, whether that be with the recorder's office, whether that be with the treasurer's office, having a personal relationship with those individuals so that you can stay up to date upon what's going on with these offices, having the most information to be able to disseminate out to the public and your constituents is mightily important. But one of the most important aspects of that is knowing your county office staff. I have learned to live by a bit of a mantra there that a friend of mine taught me, and that is the world is controlled by secretaries, so to speak. Knowing the process, knowing the officer is one thing, but at the end of the day, there's generally going to be a staff member that is handling that responsibility. And sometimes what the constituents is reaching out can be emotional, it could be something they've been going through a while now. So they're reaching out to you for a reason in one manner or another. So making sure that you have a functioning working relationship, not only with the elected officer, the official in the office, but the office staff, so they can really help you process and get these matters resolved is really crucial there. I know myself working through our process, we don't necessarily have the most accessible website, so to speak. So though the ability to get whatever they need done is there, it may not necessarily be as user friendly, and that's where a lot of time error and or assistance may be needed by constituents, so to speak. So it's crucial. Outside of that, just the county processes in general, some of you would know, being county board members and or having interacted with them before, not too many people know the full totality of what the county board does or what the county does as a governmental entity. So one, knowing that yourself, but being able to accurately explain that in an easy digestible fashion to your constituents so that they know how to effectively approach their issues and make sure their needs are met is crucial, and obviously only has nothing but positive reverberations for you yourself as an elected official and the relationship you have with your constituents. So county, it's I don't want to say you fly by the pants of your seat, so to speak, but you really have to, it's on the fly, so to speak. So making sure you're able to take on requests from constituents that aren't necessarily as concrete or clear cut, and being able to flesh out and going to these different offices to being able to meet the needs of your constituents is again crucial. I'm going to float back and forth and between the state and the county because some of them are closely related. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here in just a second. But before I go away from the county aspect of things, because this is something that can be done on the state side as well, but is proactive. Again, the county isn't necessarily the sexiest position or authority, so to speak. So not everybody knows about what's going on and necessarily would know how they can be involved in that process. And that's where we as the elected official, being proactive in that force, can work to undercut that, so to speak. So that means door-to-door canvassing. I know we're in the midst of the pandemic, though doing things in a safe manner is definitely doable. So I know I have, over the course of a couple of days and weeks, have made sure to knock on some of the doors of my constituents here in my district, just to see what their concerns are, what they think the county should be doing and providing them as citizens, things of that nature, just to get a barometer of where they are on these issues. And it gives dividends, so to speak. I've been doing this since November, well, before November, then during the campaign side of things. And it really, like I said, it really gives you an intimate understanding of where people are, and gives you, and if they don't have that understanding of the county, it gives you an opportunity to explain them. And again, really solidify that relationship between elected official and the constituent. And another avenue of this that I've seen done, though this one may depend upon what kind of resources you have available to you, are constituency surveys, so to speak. This would be where you may send a mailer or a questionnaire of some sort to your district, to your constituents, and like I said, to get a general barometer of where they at. This would allow you to do it on a larger scale generally than doing it on a canvassing aspect of things, though that it largely depends upon what kind of resources you have and depends upon what office you're dealing with. Sometimes village clerk may not necessarily have the time and resources to do that, though individuals at the state level or higher definitely usually do. So it just varies back and forth as to what resources you have available to you. But there are avenues and ways for you to meet and get out and speak to your constituents. All right, so we're going to slide into the state side of things here. So at the heart of everything, or you should say at the beginning of it, should be ethics. Ethics is, in this day and time in the state of Illinois, is an incredibly important topic, and making sure we're doing things and handling things in an ethical manner is incredibly important. So either as the representative and or an elected official, as the elected official and or a staff member, you're a representative of the public, you're a representative of your office that you're dealing with. So again, you want to make sure that you're doing it by code, and it just makes things easier for everyone. I mean, in a world of FOIA requests and all these different things, making sure we're doing things by the book just leads to a general degree of continuity for everyone. So going off the slides here, by Illinois statute, within 30 days of being appointed and or being hired on as a Senate employee, you are required to take the Illinois General Assembly ethics training. And in fact, I decided for the sake of this presentation to go back and retake my training this morning, just so I had a general full up-to-date view of where we currently are and what that training looks like. You are required to take it annually, again, as I said. So it roughly only takes about 30 to 45 minutes, pretty straightforward. But as the bottom says, it really gives you a really strong understanding of what to do and what not to do, because that's incredibly important. And the blinds get blurred, so to speak. I mean, this is Illinois. There's 1,000 levels of government. Most people are involved in politics and their personal life in one manner or another. So the lines can be blurred and can cross each other time to time. So it's really good to have a firm understanding of where the boundaries and parameters are for us as elected officials and also as staff members. So it can get a bit wonky when it comes to taking the training. So, and obviously you're required to do that when you're an elected official and or a staff member working on their behalf. So I won't necessarily go in full detail of what the training covers in totality, though I do have some points and some graphics that I'm going to go over here in the next slide. So I apologize if this is somewhat hard for CDU, although I think it should be digestible with its size. Again, we're not going to go through all of these points exactly. I may need to adjust that bar there. But here's a list of the 15 prohibited political activities that you will come across in that training, though it applies to all of your time working on state time, so to speak, and just gives you a clear-cut understanding of what you can and cannot do. So I go through a couple of them, and at the bottom there, excuse me, we have some examples of how these come into play. So just so you get an understanding of how it works in real-world applications. So preparing for, organizing, or participating in any political meeting, political rally, political demonstration, and or political event. Obviously, clearly prohibited on state times. So don't be organizing fundraisers, some kind of meet and greet, anything of that nature while on state time. Pretty clear cut, as you would think, but just don't do it. So soliciting contributions, including but not limited to the purchase, selling, distributing, receiving payment for tickets for any political fundraiser, political meeting, and or political event. Again, it's pretty straightforward there. Don't do what you know you should not be doing on state time. We'll get into where the questions may lie as to what is and what is not an ethical violation, though in cases like these are pretty straightforward. So just don't test the waters on a lot of these aspects of things. Planning and conducting or participating in a public opinion poll is a big win for office staff, so to speak. So you do get a lot of phone calls. Sometimes they will be scam calls, but I have gotten occasionally the political poll, and obviously I have to decline to participate in that because it is an ethical violation. No form of political campaigning, electioneering, fundraising, whether that be for your candidate and or a cause in general or organization, just inadvertently or intentionally, just don't cross those boundaries. Whenever anything political comes around, which I have outlined here in the presentation, and we'll go over it then, but if anything political comes around, whether that be on the phone, whether that be in your office, you are obligated to inform that individual that it is an ethical violation to discuss anything political and that you cannot do so. And in fact, if that individual continues to discuss something political, whether that be via phone or in office, you are well within your rights to cease that phone call and or ask the individual to leave the property. It is an ethical violation, and we don't want to, whether it's a staff member and or elected official, don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy or anything of that nature just due to that. So that aspect happens and comes into play a lot more frequently than you would think there.
Hey, Karl, if I can jump in on this, how does this also apply with email? We get a lot of emails going out on the political side. Sometimes people will, get emails to their governmental one. Or what is constituent-wise? What can we do or not do on that?
That's a great question there, Dan. Yeah, because email is a very important situation. We've seen a lot of information out there. So email is the same way. Depending upon how much information is provided to you in the email, it kind of varies. So if they provide some kind of phone number, something of that nature, there in that situation, I will take it upon myself to reach out to an individual and let them know as to why. I mean, with constituency services, it's a very big deal. One, it's a big deal in general, but getting back to people in a timely fashion is a whole nother layer in that. So people will definitely get disgruntled and are upset if you do not respond back to them. So I take it upon myself, if they do provide that information, to reach out and let them know what the situation is and that we can't discuss anything political of that nature, whether that be in phone, person, or email. It does not change that per se. If individuals continue on after you've given that warning, for say individuals persist on with that behavior, so to speak, different things happen. So as office members, we will jot down that information, that individual's contact number, keep that on record and file, and just keep that record file, and know that when that individual calls office, that you don't have to interact with them at all, and or depending upon how severe the case is, you can reach out to them again, let them know what the situation is. But in severe cases, we can reach out to the Capitol Police, things of that nature, because we don't want it to develop into any kind of situation where we need to worry about the safety of anyone. Political matters, they vary in a heavy degree, but some people get really personally affected by these issues. So you don't want to let it get to the extreme, but by that same sense, you also want to still have that personal approach. So I myself, like I said, I always try to convey to the individual is that we cannot do that. It's an ethical violation, and that we will face repercussion for it at the end of the day. So another big point I wanted to go over was some of these examples here. Slide this bar again. I apologize. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. But I want to go through these examples here so it gives a more clear-cut, real-world example of how these happen. So for example, suppose you work for the Secretary of State. Someone wants a copy of a roll call vote on a bill and has been directed to you at your workstation. One of your duties is to provide roll calls to people who ask of them. You suspect the person is doing opposition research for a candidate to determine how the candidates opponent voted on a bill. Although the person asking for the roll call may be working on a campaign, you would merely be performing your official state duties by giving them a person to call. So yeah, so this is a good point. Not all actions are prohibited, so to speak. Though they may sometimes seem like they may cross a fence, there's not. You like in this at the covers here, if you are sending out information that is public record, whether that be non-FOIA or non-FOIA, this is your job, this is your responsibility. You can give it to an individual, as they said, whether or not it seems if they are doing it for political purposes, whether that be malicious or not, their intent doesn't matter. It's still within your purview of your responsibilities, and you can handle that. Moreover, though, at no time may you intentionally misappropriate state property or resources or engaging in any prohibited political activity for the benefit of any campaign for elected office or political organization. For example, suppose you work for a member of the district office. You volunteer on your time off to work at the member's campaign headquarters. You don't take the member's official stationery from the district office and use it in the campaign headquarters for an invitation for a political fundraiser. Likewise, you don't use state computer, printer, telephone, fax machine, anything, etc. That is very, very big. In politics, a lot of individuals, though they may work for someone on their official occupational side of things, they're usually often involved with the party side of things and campaigns. And you definitely don't want to mix those two at all. You don't want to muddy those waters. Make sure you don't use any form of state property in any capacity for political purposes. That ethics training gets real in-depth and involved there, from something as simple as some stationery to the uses of a building that the state leases and or has ownership over and how it can be done. Dan can speak to this part at a different time if there's questions. There are specific limitations around certain things in Sangamon County specifically, because that's where the capital is. But again, that's getting a bit into the weeds that we don't necessarily need to at this current point in time. So there are penalties at the end of the day. This is why I said you want to make sure and convey to the individuals who you're talking to and or just being up to date on yourself. There are definitely penalties for violating these acts, so to speak. You yourself are subject to criminal prosecution, and there definitely is a civil fine and economic fine imposed, which is alluded to there at the bottom. You can face up a year in jail, of a $2,500 fine as well. So the penalties aren't steep, aren't minor, so to speak. It's not just some kind of letter you get in the mail. You can definitely face a strong degree of strong degree of punishment for that. Go ahead and continue on here. When in doubt, don't. It's pretty straightforward there. So if you ever have any questions whether or not something is an ethical violation or not, just simply don't do it. Every state agency, including the legislative office staff, has an appointed ethics officer, and you can go to this officer if you have any questions about the ethical parameters of any given situation. Please do use that resource. State agencies have them themselves, but us as office staff, it's incredibly important to know, again, where the fine lines are and where it's not to. And this is the notice that I was speaking to earlier when it comes to if an individual enters your office discussing political matters, please advise them that it is an ethical violation for you to discuss anything political. If the individual continues to discuss the political matters, you are within your rights to, like I said, hang up the phone and or ask for individuals to leave the property, and there are the continuation process past that. Though normally it won't get to that point. Is there a way for me to minimize this? Apologies there. So as the staff member for an elected official, you are the gatekeeper, so to speak. You are, in a sense, what is the decider upon what is trivial, what's important, what needs to be in front of the center at this current point in time, especially in the midst of session. It's a very, very busy time, so to speak. Everyone is vying for time, for the senator vying for time with leadership, all these different things. Make sure that their voice is heard and get whatever legislation they want through passed and or meeting requests, phone calls, all these different things, letters of support. So it's truly up to you as the staff member to use a matter of a degree of discretion there and deciphering as to what needs to be there and in front of the center at that current point in time and what does not. This is not to say that every constituency matter is important, so to speak, obviously, but there are things that you as a staff member can handle, and there are things that need to be, obviously, like I said, directly brought in front of the member themselves. Though that fine line is important. As a staff member, you will get a general sense of where that is. It varies between every member themselves, but it's important nonetheless. All right, so getting into the weeds of the constituency service aspect of things. So when I first started on with Senator Bernard, I joined right after the 2018 cycle. And at that point in time, I don't think it was mandatory, but they were still using the old school pads. Constituent was a part of the deal, but I don't believe it was fully mandatory at that point in time, but it is now the general pro forma use, I guess you could say, for handling constituency services. So iConstituency is an online-based constituency response service, It's all-encompassing program that has organized most constituency-based functions into a virtual space for the sake of efficiency and transparency. I'm going to go ahead and click over to my iConstituency profile there just to give you a general sense and outlook of what it looks like. And so that you know what's going on there. Don't want to show you too much pertinent information there with the senator, but as you can see, this is where iConstituency is now. So the General Assembly members' website on ILGA will have their contact information and where you can reach them electronically. So it's all compiled here, though you can add additional contact information for constituents that reach out to the office by a phone, in person, in your private time, so to speak, and so that you can all keep it in-house here and organized in front of you. So for instance, this is going to give a general idea of what these kind of things will look like. So this is just a simple correspondence with the constituency, just asking for support on the Legislative Accessibility Act, things of that nature. Pretty straightforward. I do a bit of old school myself. I still keep a handy dandy notepad and paper here so that I can jot down all the information and have it much accessible as possible. How you choose to go about it. One, you'll always want to keep that electronic record, though I personally do find it helpful to have the old school pen and paper around in times of need.
So Karl, we had a question that came in, and maybe you can expand on this. iConstituent, if folks aren't familiar with it, it is a very useful tool for constituent services, but it also is something that not everybody has access to. If I'm a county board member in say a downstate county that, you know, maybe I don't have the resources like something like this, how would you recommend kind of handling stuff as requests come in for different constituent requests?
100%. That's a great point. Yeah. So iConstituent is something that the Senate, so the General Assembly uses, especially the Senate Democratic Caucus and the staff members here. Obviously, it's a Democratic call, so all of us are Democrats. Though, as she said, county board member, county elected officials, county office members, they don't have these things necessarily afforded to them, unfortunately. That's where I prefer the old school pen and paper there, so that you generally have a record of whom is where, what does need to be, a file cabinet that goes hand in hand with that. Kind of very old school when it comes to the county side of things, because as you all know, the county doesn't necessarily have as many resources allocated to them when it comes to these purposes. So us as elected officials and or staff members do have to pick up the slack, so to speak, there. Fortunately, the state side of things does try to make it as accessible as possible and as functional as possible for the sake of efficiency and transparency. Unfortunately, I do know that that's not necessarily always afforded to us as county board members and or county office holders. I definitely wish that we do. Wish we did. So the biggest aspect of the job, so to speak, is one, handling, meeting requests, all these different things for the senator or the representative, whatever your elected official is. But the biggest aspect, I would say, is dealing with state agencies and dealing with requests, which is really the heart of constituency service here. So I just kind of drew up a small list of some different agencies in which you'll be interacting with, and that have common occurrences. So as we know, right now in the midst of the pandemic, the Illinois Department of Employment Security is a vitally important agency here, doling out unemployment in the midst of the situation. We have had hundreds of thousands of millions of Illinoisans that have had to deal with adverse effects of this pandemic, and it's dramatically affected their ability to sustain themselves economically. So we handle a huge influx of unemployment process claims. So having a relationship with that state official is important. I'll get into that in the next slide because that's there. But employment security is an incredibly important agency at this current point in time. We deal with requests just about daily when it comes to sending in requests for getting in contact and reviewing individuals' accounts. The Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity is very good for county board officials as well. So the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity is the economic housing agent for the state of Illinois. A large degree of the state funding and grants that are provided by the state come through out of this department. Same thing for the economic programs that we are to offset the effects of the pandemic that have been there. Our pandemic relief loan programs, things of that nature. The Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation is another one. They handle all licensing for different professional regulations, whether that be barbershops, whether that be hair braiders, whether that be banking, all these different aspects of things. Very, very important, especially in the midst of the pandemic here, getting licensing and renewals, all these different aspects through in such a challenging environment. Illinois Department of Revenue is another one. Oftentimes we have individuals having issues with their taxes. And as many of you probably will know from prior personal experience, state agencies in the state of Illinois sometimes are somewhat hard to get a hold of or get the degree of response that you want from them. So that's where we as that elected official and or the staff member are a crucial conduit between the public and process, so to speak. So being able to reach out and have a connection that will get them better results than what they were getting before is obviously what the goal is, but it pays dividends in the long run. And another large one is the Illinois State Police Firearms Service Division Bureau. So this is the housing agency the agency that houses firearm FOID permits, concealed carry licenses, all these different things. With the midst of the pandemic going on, we have pushed out renewal dates and extended them as well. So this is another very important agency that I deal with quite commonly when it comes to processing constituency claims.
Karl, what local agencies do you work with the most in your county role on the county board? And what would be important for a local, whether it's village board, city council, what would be important on a local level for them to know?
Yeah, so at the local level, I'll start with the county board there. So one of the most common occurrences when it comes to the county or processes that they deal with is taxation, also veterans affairs. So those are two big things that I like to be able to plug in individuals with that information. The city council, it varies, but I mean, municipal services, water, rent, all these housing, landlords, all these different things that people are currently dealing with when it comes to the pandemic, all the other things. Like I said, it's incredibly important for you to have an understanding of where and how these are processed and who does it as well, so that you can help the constituent get to the end goal as effective and as soon as possible, because constituency service is vital. I mean, I worked under Senator Menard and had for several years before his resignation, and that's one of his biggest calling cards, so to speak. It was the degree and efficiency of his constituency services, and how effective he was at getting back and solving problems for the general public. So just having that knowledge base all over is a good base. At the local elected officials, being county board members, county office holders, just truly having understanding of what those processes are. So it varies. To answer the question, which ones I deal with the most, it truly depends. But having the full total understanding of it is what I try to have the strongest basis possible to go from. So going online with this commonly used state agency list here, the contact person as us as elected officials and also as staff members is the legislative liaisons. And this link here should take us to this list. So this is a gold mine, so to speak, in the world of constituency services, especially dealing with state agencies. That is a large part of our duties there, as I say, being the conduit between the public and process, so to speak. And these liaisons are the individuals tasked with dealing with these issues on behalf of legislative offices, so to speak. So it's not the contact person that the general public deals with. It's more or less for elected office and legislative offices, so that we can expedite the process in some manner or another, dealing with constituency services, so that things can be pulled out of a general pool and looked at under a bigger microscope, so to speak. So another key point of that would be like the Illinois State Police Firearms Services Bureau, having a relationship with the liaisons and director of government relationships is incredibly important. And that I have individuals calling the office quite frequently, wanting to know where their FOID cards are, so to speak. As many of you know from the news, there's a very large backlog and degree of bogging down the efficiency of that general office. So knowing the resources that are available to us as staff members or us as elected officials is crucial, and this is one of them. Knowing your legislative liaisons is an incredibly valuable resource. I have this page bookmarked on my computer at work, so that's another incredibly invaluable resource. Go ahead and hop back to the section. So another one is Legislator Look Up, and so this is important when it comes to dealing with numerous issues. One, we want to make sure, and in some sense, that when people call and are wanting to speak to their elected official, that they actually know whom they're talking to, or not whom they're talking to, but whom they need to speak to is a better way to put that. A lot of times individuals will call the office or reach out to the office, and they will not necessarily exactly know whom their elected officials are, whether that be the state, local, or federal level. And for the sake of efficiency, especially at the state level, we do try to funnel them in the direction of their current elected officials, so to speak. So luckily enough, this tool here, the Legislator Lookup tool, is afforded to us. It is found on the ilga.gov website, which we can go to, though I have it just linked here. So from here, and I did have an direct example when I pulled up our local Democratic Macon County office here. So if you type in an address, for instance, 132 South Church Street, Decatur, Illinois, you will get the full gambit of whom these individuals' elected officials are, starting with their federal representative in the House. So for instance, here in Decatur, it'd be Congressman Davis, Senator Turner, Representative Scheer, and Senators Durbin and Duckworth. Governor Pritzker, it continues on the list, but this is important for when it comes to dealing with individuals reaching out to the offices about processes and things that aren't necessarily handled on the purview of our office. A lot of times, outside of a state agency, individuals will call about federal matters, federal issues. This is also incredibly important for you to have a relationship with your federal legislatures on both sides of the aisle, whether that be on the House and the Senate. So especially with things going on with stimulus payments, all these different things, we have a lot of different requests, people reaching out, calling into office about federal matters. So knowing in whom exactly who their elected official is crucial in getting that done in an effective and timely manner. Funneling someone to, or handing someone off just to the next individual doesn't work to resolve that constituent's problem, and it doesn't help us in the long run. So having, like I said, having as concrete and direct understanding of whom these elected officials are for these individuals is incredibly helpful. So yeah, lastly, this doesn't necessarily apply to our elected officials on the county level as much, and our individuals that do not have staff, though it does apply as well. Teamwork, teamwork, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, and this is incredibly true when it comes to constituency services. What you do not know, your colleague will, so to speak. I do find that constituency services is kind of an on-the-fly situation. I oftentimes will deal with requests that I have not dealt with before, and you don't necessarily want to lie or give the wrong information to someone. You do not know, be forthright about it and let them know that you will get in contact and find that information for them. And that is where the teamwork and the delegation aspect comes into play. If you do not have the proper knowledge base and or the proper contact to handle a certain request, you or your colleagues around you, individuals in your certain network sphere will have that and will make your job so much easier. Again, going back to the efficiency of state government, sometimes there are periods of time where someone will go without some degree of communication, and or getting back with someone in a timely fashion really can help the constituent in that situation. So being able to get that proper contact information instead of having going through all these different outside channels is incredibly important. I know under Senator Menard's staff, we have several office heads, so to speak, and Senator Turner as well. And we delegate and exchange information and data as much as possible, contact information. Because in the midst of session, in the midst of meetings, in the midst of important, point in times as an elected official, things definitely can get hexing, and you don't want to miss anything. You want to make sure everyone gets the sense that they are being met, their needs are being met, that they're important, because they're your constituents, the people that you put you in office in the day. But making sure each individual feels special and that their needs are being met is important. And another big thing is being persistent. So a lot of times we'll get requests or constituency requests, whether that be reaching out to another agency, whether that be doing this or that, involving other parties. Being persistent and staying up on it, a lot of times things will fall by the wayside, whether it's especially you're seeing things over email, things of that nature. So being persistent and following up on these different things will help not only yourself, but it will also give the constituent a general sense that you are valuing their time and their request and getting back to them and helping them through their situation. So that's the general gist of my PowerPoint presentation, the rest of which I have more or less scheduled away for questions, because I do know that, like I said, it's kind of a by-the-fly situation, and some of these are more difficult to handle. So it does take time and a certain degree of individual drilling down. So if there's any questions that I know we have a series of questions here in the chat that you want to go through and double back around on.
And I just want to point out to everyone that as Karl was going through, I was putting in the links for the presentations that he was referencing. So the legislative liaisons, the legislator look up, it's in the chat. Again, we'll also send out the presentation afterwards. But one of the questions that we got in ahead of time, and I know you talked a little bit about making sure that we're staying persistent and meeting the needs of the constituents, but as newly elected officials, what are your thoughts on, when is it appropriate to wait until the next day to respond to a constituent. For instance, if you get a constituent message, if you primarily use Facebook for your constituent outreach, if they message you at midnight on a Saturday, do you have to respond to them, or can you wait until, or do you normally wait until Monday? What's that line between, making sure you're staying and up to date and meeting the needs, but also being able to, have that boundary of, that's your time, after hours?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think the answer kind of lies there in that last part you said there. That boundary, that thin line vacillates depending upon whom you are, so to speak. If you do the majority of your constituency work, your interaction with the public, your constituency on Facebook, things of that nature, you may be more inclined to do something like that nature. Though responding back to constituents in the middle of the night, it's not something that I would jump to doing there. But like I said, it's all with the certain purview of who you are. I mean, that same constituent may also be incredibly inclined to the fact that their elected official is responding back to them on Facebook at 2 o'clock in the morning. That they may feel great about that. But just, I have a general rule of thumb. I try to get back to everyone within at least 24 hours upon certain aspect of things. And it kind of just depends upon you as a person, so to speak. But yeah, it's definitely a good question, because we kind of vacillate between that as well. Like I said, it's all kind of up for subjective. You kind of just have to take it as a case by case basis, so to speak. But yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
This is kind of along those lines of how you respond to requests. But what recommendation would you give for a constituent makes a request to you as the elected official, or even on the staff side? How long until till that request has to be fulfilled, or a response? I mean, I like how you said 24 hours. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. And anybody who's been around for a while, Gene Callahan always used to have a rule of thumb of you call everybody back within 24 hours. And as elected officials, that's always a good start. But for fulfilling a request, that might take longer than that. What do you think?
Yeah. You hit it right there on the head, so to speak. Some requests may be something as simple as just making a phone call and getting resolved. Another request may be, quite difficult, getting some information extracted from a certain agency. That's the extraction of the word, but getting information that may not be public available for those constituents. That may be a process that takes much longer. For instance, I got a call this afternoon about a local municipality that is looking to have a letter of support from the senator, so to speak, and they need that done in a couple of days. So that obviously that's something that I'm going to be jumping on tomorrow morning when I get back into the office to handle. It kind of varies depending upon what the request is and where it comes from. That's not to say one thing is more important than the other, because again, all constituents are important at the end of the day. But what that request is kind of sets the bar as to what kind of response is in regards to that. Regardless, I'm going to get back to that call or that email within 24 hours as possible. Now, handling the request, like I said, kind of varies upon what the request is.
In your short time on the county board, or even on the staff side, do you look at how you build out your outreach, without we're doing constituent services, or if you're a staff member working for a principal, how do you plan out your outreach on different things? Is it just a case by case basis on what's coming up, or do you kind of take the lead on, all right, this week we're going to focus on environmental issues, how the Biden administration now is pushing infrastructure, and we want to kind of outreach on that? How do you kind of put together your plans for that?
Yeah, let's get into the proactive side of things that I try to cover there a bit in the beginning. So definitely handle it as a come by case basis per se, though when it comes to proactively, that is can definitely be, if you have a certain goal, you have a certain, I said, whether it be environmental, if you have a certain issue that you have spoken to and dedicated yourself as an elected official, that's definitely something that you want to be up on, when it comes to constituents reaching out to you. So that's where I think the door-to-door canvassing and possibly the constituency surveys via mail are very great for that point, because it's not just, like I said, it's not reactive. It's not waiting for them to come to you with their issues, whatever they need. It's truly going out to the community in these neighborhoods, in our districts, and finding out where and what the issues of our constituents are, so to speak. So that's where, if you want to be poignant and you want to be tactful about it, like I said, door-to-door canvassing, that's a great in-personal interaction there, but also the in-mail surveys, so that people can have the opportunity to inform you and let you know where they are in issues and what issues they think need to be addressed is important. It's great.
And just remind everyone, make sure you've got a couple minutes left here. If you have any other questions, let's get them in the chat. We had one just come in here. What platform do you think are your constituents more likely to use, or what platform would you advise any local officials to use? It's Facebook, Twitter. You know, there's a lot of different social media, like Nextdoor app, social media sites. What's the best way to engage constituents on different platforms?
So on the county side of things, as a county board member myself, I do have like a Facebook page that I do interact with the public on there as well. Though we are one of the counties that still has our phone numbers and emails, all those things publicly available to the general public. And I'll admit that's where most of my constituents do reach out to me there. So I do have a cell phone number that is available to the public there, and the individuals do reach out to me through that. Most commonly is by cell phone. Again, though, I do have the Facebook page that I interact with individuals with as well. Personally, I just find it to be the cell phone. That's on the county side of things, though. When it comes to the state side of things, definitely email and phone call. I like then calling the office and leaving a voicemail or getting a hold of me in that fashion is the most common there. It also gives you the ability to be personal and have the interaction. I mean, emails are emails, and we get a billion of them, but it's not necessarily as personal of interaction, so to speak. Having that, either that face-to-face and or the phone call, I guess, in the midst of a pandemic, really does help you get a true understanding where they are.
Let's talk about that for a second. What do you think of different face-to-face stuff? You know, we've seen the Republicans and their lack of doing. Is that something maybe a local official should look at doing, or maybe smaller, you know, coffee chats down at the coffee shop, things like that? I mean, what would work best for a local official?
You cut out there towards the beginning, but I think I got the gist of your question, and it was, what can we do to have those face-to-face interactions? Yeah, make yourself available and being out in public. I try to be at as many events as possible, to where I know the general public is going to be there to interact with my constituents as common as possible, so to speak. Though you yourself can, like I said, be strategic and make those events. The coffee chat is a great one. I am hosting coffee chats. I know over the course of the past couple of cycles, I've definitely seen, you know, the small business tour stops throughout the community, things of that nature. And those are great opportunities to interact with your constituency, with the community, and those face-to-face interactions. Hopefully when things get back to full normality with us having a higher degree of vaccinations, we can start congregating in large areas again, because, you know, that's, as we all know, it's where a lot of the emotional and social buildup comes from, is being together as a unit, getting things done. So we're in a tough place right now with the pandemic, but in a normal world, yeah, hosting those in-person events, coffee chats, coffee with the candidate, all these different things, great ways to get a general sense of where the community's at on certain issues.
Okay. Well, we're right at about an hour, actually finishing up a little bit beforehand. So go ahead and thank you, Karl, for joining us this evening and sharing your expertise on this. Again, folks, we're going to share out all this information later. We're also going to be posting it on the IDCCA YouTube page. So if you missed anything and you want to go back and rewatch the session, we'll have it available there. Please also take advantage of following us on our social media. We post a ton of messaging information and information just on Democrats throughout the state. So if you have any questions on where we're at with things, find us on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and make sure you're staying up to date with the IDCCA going forward. So with that, thank you again, Karl, and everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you for having me, Dan.